Hello, and welcome to VBC Daily 3. We're so thankful that you joined us today. I'm Larry Howard. I'm the executive pastor at Valley Bible Church in Hercules. And today we're going to be going through a passage in 1 Corinthians 11, verses 27 through 32. Now, if you follow the formula, if you've been with us, great, and you follow that formula that we have, I'm going to remind you of that. Read the passage 3 times, then try and determine, what does that passage say about us? What does it say about God? And then what do we then do with that passage? What is it? And I have a few notes, so if I look down from time to time, please forgive me for that. But it's better that I have some content. So anyway, what does it say about us? This passage is speaking about communion, and the overall thing that I see that it says about, the number one thing it says about us is examine yourselves. Do not come and take the Lord's Supper, the communion, also known as Lord's Supper. Don't do that in an unworthy manner. And so what does that mean, unworthy? Does that mean you have to be good enough? No, that's already been taken care of. We're good enough because of what Christ did on the cross, and we're remembering what he did for us. But that unworthy manner is saying, don't come to this table with unrepented sin. Sin against a brother, let's say. That was earlier in Corinthians, we see that, where you got to take care of those things. But in this particular passage, it's saying you need to examine yourself. You need to take a look at yourself. Make a judgment. Are you guilty? Are you here taking the Lord's Supper in an unworthy manner? Are you remembering him, doing the ceremony of remembering his body and his blood, and you've still got sin? The very thing he did on the cross was forgive us for sin, and now we come and act like we're okay and everything's good, and yet I've got a problem with the guy sitting next to me that we're taking communion with. He's saying, take a look at that. Examine yourselves. And then what happens is, because people were doing this without examining themselves, some were getting sick and some were even dying. So some of you are asleep. Well, asleep to the believer is you're no longer alive. And in this particular passage, that's what he's talking about. You're not losing your salvation, you're losing your life. And so that's what it kind of says about us. Take a look at yourself. Make sure that you are in a peaceful, unified accord with the others, and especially with God. Make sure that if you have sin in your life, you've not only taken care of it with your brother, but that you've confessed that to God also. So come there with that. What is God's part in it? Well, if you don't take care of that, then God says, I step in and I do some judging. So you're allowed to do some judgment yourself. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then God's going to judge. And what happens, the result of God's judgment? Death and sickness. So you can take care of a bunch of things there yourself. So what does it mean for us today? Well, examine yourselves. When you come to the Lord's Supper, make sure that when you arrive taking communion, that you've taken care of any issues that might prevent you from taking the Lord's Supper, or that would say, I'm going to go ahead and take it, but I haven't taken care of these sins. Well, now, be careful that you don't put judgment on yourself. So it's interesting. You can either judge, or you can have God be the judge. And so I think that that's the key. So our takeaway is examine yourselves. Make sure that you have it together. Make sure that you have a clean slate between you and the Lord. And not that you could be good enough. No, God's taking care of that in his Son. But don't come here and, I call it, kind of smacking God in the face by bringing sin and acting like I'm good when his Son is taking care of that. And so we got to be careful with that. So examine yourself, lest God judge you. And that's really what that passage is saying to me. And we have to be careful with that when we do the Lord's Supper. Hey, be sure and join us again tomorrow. Thank you for being with me today on this. And just be with us tomorrow as we pray through this passage and we get a perspective from a prayer point. All right? Look forward to seeing you here again tomorrow. And hey, make sure you join us 11 a.m. in our parking lot there for service. All right? Thanks. Bye.